The hardest door that ever closed on me wasn't in a boardroom. It was my son's front door. I stood there holding a box of his late mother's photographs, while my daughter-in-law calmly told me I was no longer welcome in their home, and my son said nothing. What she didn't know. 3 weeks later, she would walk into her office, look up at the head of the table, and realize she had just banned her own boss. And in that moment, I had to decide, would I choose revenge or character? Welcome to my YouTube channel Moral Ecos, where silence speaks. My name is John Taylor. I am 60 years old. I've built businesses from nothing. I've buried the love of my life. I've survived financial collapse, betrayal, and grief that hollowed me out from the inside. But nothing hurt like hearing my own son remain silent, while his wife told me I was no longer welcome in their home. And the cruel twist. She had no idea I was her boss. The kind of man I used to be. There was a time when my house was loud. My late wife, Claire, used to fill every corner with music. She sang while cooking, while folding laundry, while scolding Daniel for leaving his shoes in the hallway. I can still hear her laugh echoing in memory. Daniel was born on a rainy October night. I was 28, terrified and overjoyed. When the nurse placed him in my arms, I remember thinking, this is it. This is the purpose of my life. I worked long hours running a small construction company back then. We didn't have much, but we had dignity. I missed sleep, not milestones. I taught Daniel how to swing a bat, how to fix a leaky faucet, how to look someone in the eye when speaking. When Claire passed away 12 years ago after a sudden aneurysm, the world went quiet. Grief does strange things to a house. Rooms grow larger. Even the ticking of a clock sounds accusatory. Daniel was 25 when he lost his mother. We held each other through that funeral. We promised we'd never let the other feel alone. For a few years, we kept that promise. Then Vanessa entered our lives. When love changes the balance. Vanessa was impressive, sharp mind, polished speech, controlled smile. The first time she came to dinner, she complimented my roast before even tasting it. That was my first clue. She was strategic. But she made Daniel happy. And when you're a father, especially a widowed one, you learn quickly that your child's happiness outweighs your instincts. They married within a year. At the wedding, Daniel whispered, "You're not losing me, Dad." I smiled. But marriages shift gravity. And slowly, I began to feel the distance. The subtle rewriting of my place. It started with scheduling. "Dad, can we do dinner next week instead? Vanessa's tired tonight. We're focusing on our own traditions this year. Reasonable things, modern things." Then came the word that would redefine everything. Boundaries. Vanessa used it often. "Healthy boundaries are important, John." At first I respected that. Of course I did. Young couples deserve space. But boundaries became walls. If I dropped by with groceries, I should have called. If I offered advice, it was unsolicited. If I mentioned Claire, it made Vanessa uncomfortable. Daniel never openly agreed with her, but he never contradicted her either. And silence can wound deeper than confrontation. The day the door closed. 3 weeks before I discovered the truth, I drove to their home with a box of Claire's old photo albums. Daniel had once said, "I don't want to forget Mom's laugh." I thought the photos might help. Vanessa opened the door. Her eyes immediately hardened. "John, you should have called." "I was nearby," I said gently, "brought something for Daniel." Daniel appeared behind her, hesitant. Vanessa crossed her arms. "We've talked about this. We need structure. You can't just show up whenever you want." "Structure?" I looked at my son. "Daniel." He shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, maybe just text first next time." I felt the ground tilt. "I'm not a stranger," I said quietly. Vanessa's voice grew firm, controlled. And we're not children. If you can't respect our boundaries, then maybe it's better you don't come over at all. There it was. The sentence that severed something invisible. I waited. For Daniel to object. For him to say that's too far. He didn't. The door closed. And I stood there holding a box of memories. The life they never asked about. After Claire passed, I couldn't stay in the old house all day. The silence suffocated me. So I poured myself into rebuilding. I sold my construction firm and invested in a struggling consulting company. It was nearly bankrupt, poor leadership, outdated strategy, low morale. I saw potential. I didn't just invest money. I invested discipline, systems, culture. Over the next decade, I rebuilt it into a thriving corporate advisory firm with over 300 employees. I became majority owner and CEO. But I never advertised it to family. I didn't want Daniel to feel pressured or indebted. I didn't want wealth to define our relationship. So when Vanessa talked about her corporate job, I listened politely. I didn't realize she worked for me. Until the quarterly executive review. Recognition in a boardroom. I rarely attended divisional meetings in person, but that quarter I did. As I reviewed the printed roster, one name froze my breath. Vanessa Taylor, Corporate Development Manager. My daughter-in-law. I sat back slowly. So this is how truth reveals itself. When she walked into the conference room and saw me at the head of the table, her face drained of color. "Mr. Taylor," she whispered. "Yes," I replied calmly. Around us sat 12 senior executives. I led her present. Her strategy was ambitious, borderline reckless. She proposed expansion without sufficient contingency planning. Under normal circumstances, I would have challenged her more aggressively. But this was not normal. When she finished, the room looked to me. "Walk me through your downside protection," I said evenly. She stumbled, recovered. Sweat gathered near her temple. Afterward, I asked her to stay. The door shut. Silence. "You didn't tell Daniel," she said first. "You didn't ask." Her composure cracked. "I didn't know." "That's clear." Her voice softened. "Are you going to fire me?" That question told me everything. She saw authority as something to weaponize. "No," I said firmly. "Your job depends on your performance, not our personal relationship." She blinked in surprise. "I separate business from ego," I continued. "Can you?" She nodded slowly. But something had shifted inside her. The weight of power. I won't pretend I wasn't tempted. There were moments I imagined saying, "How does it feel to close doors now?" But power misused becomes poison. And I had already lost too much in life to let pride destroy what remained. Instead, I mentored her professionally, firmly but fairly. She improved. She began staying late, asking sharper questions, listening instead of defending. And I saw something beneath her control: fear. Fear of not being respected. Fear of losing authority. Fear of being small. Ironically, the very fear that led her to belittle me. The gala, the annual corporate gala, arrived in early winter. Vanessa attended with Daniel as her guest. When I stepped onto the stage and was introduced as founder and CEO, Daniel's jaw tightened in shock. He turned to her. She couldn't look at him. In my speech, I spoke about leadership and humility. Then I said, "True strength is shown not in how tightly you control others, but in how generously you treat them." The room applauded. But my eyes were on her. The apology that mattered. 2 days later, there was a knock on my door. Daniel and Vanessa stood there. No defensiveness. No excuses. I was wrong, Vanessa said immediately. I confused independence with dominance. I treated you like a threat instead of family. Daniel's voice shook, and I let it happen. I looked at my son, the boy I once carried on my shoulders. I never wanted authority in your home, I said, only presence. Vanessa stepped forward. I felt insecure around you, she admitted. You seemed calm, self-assured. I thought you were judging me. I was evaluating you, I said gently, because I love my son. Tears fell freely now. I want to fix this, she whispered. Rebuilding what matters. Healing wasn't instant. Trust rarely is. But effort changes everything. Vanessa began inviting me to dinner, not out of obligation but warmth. She asked about Claire. She listened. Daniel began calling more often. At work, Vanessa earned her promotion through undeniable merit. I recused myself from the decision entirely. She earned it. And that mattered. The real lesson. I am 60 years old. I have learned that power reveals character. It does not create it. When Vanessa banned me from their home, I could have retaliated when I discovered the truth. But revenge would have cost me my son. Respect is not demanded, it is modeled. Boundaries are healthy, but isolation is not. And family. Family is not about control. It is about humility. Moral of the story. Never assume someone's value based on what you see on the surface. Titles do not define dignity. And power should never be used to settle personal scores. If you ever find yourself holding authority over someone who has hurt you, remember this. Character is proven not when you are powerless, but when you could harm someone and choose not to. My name is John Taylor. I am 60 years old. I built a company that employs hundreds. But the greatest victory of my life was not reclaiming respect in a boardroom. It was hearing my son say, one quiet Sunday evening, "Dad, I'm glad you're home.